Maine was found to have the highest frequency in ghost sightings in the country, with 56 sightings per every 100,000 people. This was a quote from an article I read online from the radio station WCYY. But this kind of rocked me a little, and no pun intended. I can be very sure that I would have thought there were some other states and their creepy places that would have topped this list. And I can also believe it a safe guess that you would have thought so as well. And just for a little clarity, I will be referring to this list that I found in this article later in the video. Well, because if you know me, I tend to repeat things for emphasis on the subject. I can't honestly say, outwardly thinking, that I live in the most haunted city in the state of Maine. Well, then I got to thinking, what about all the other stories coming from the people in this state and the authors who document these stories and encounters? Well, a couple come to mind. Well, there's Michelle Soulier, who wrote the book Bigfoot in Maine, and as far as I know, she's hard at work on Volume 2 of that Perspective series. There is also author Nomar Slevik, who has written a number of books and has a podcast on the terrors that lie within the borders of this state. I mention Michelle and Nomar because I've talked to them on several occasions, and I know how hard they work to bring these hidden gems to light. I can now really relate to them and how hard their job can be at times. Just some of the folks whom I've talked to, everyday normal Joes and Joannes like myself, and I will be sharing a few of those stories later in the video. And there is also my own personal experiences, and that of one of my sons and my wife. As I look around this small but fast-growing city, it's sometimes difficult to think of the strong paranormal presence blanketing this area. I still refer to it as a sleepy little mill town. I find as you look deeper, you most definitely will find what you're looking for. And it's easy to do a search online for any stories or sightings that may have happened in your hometown. And as I did this for mine, I didn't really find anything comprehensive. There is a lot to be found and digested for the state of Maine itself, but not so much for Sanford. And I guess this is why the idea for this video came up, now becoming a reality. I wanted to highlight some of my experiences and the people around me. And I may also repeat myself in this statement as well. Can I prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that all of this is true? Can I prove that there is some kind of supernatural stranglehold on this sleepy little mill town? No. I can, however, share stories with you, show you the places in video or picture where some of these events occurred, as some of these places do not physically stand anymore. Really, you're going to have to go on good faith. And I should also note, I'm not going to assail you with all of these hard facts, mostly because there isn't a whole lot of them. I personally come to these kinds of formats and videos for entertainment, the value of people's stories, and the creepy nature surrounding the areas known for them. That's the kind of video that I wanted to make. Share in the spookiness of the place that I call home, and at the same time, I also want to entertain you. I always believe if you're going to do something like this, you might as well have a little fun, and make it fun to watch. Just some thoughts before we move on, and get into a little bit of the history of Sanford, and explore some of these stories. With just the amount of stories that I have, this production could be close to a couple of hours long. Some you have heard, if you have been here for a while. A couple of them were in older videos that I've since deleted for one reason or another. Most you haven't heard, not in this kind of format, at least. And as my sons and I have walked all over this town, and yes, I still call it that and always will, no matter how big it gets, it always makes me wonder, what other stories have I not heard yet? For me, I know this little burg nestled in a valley in southern Maine holds many secrets and encounters, and they have a wide range of encounters on the supernatural spectrum, ghosts to UFOs and even cryptids. And although there is a metropolitan area that has the feel of a small town, a lot of Sanford's borders are encompassed by heavily forested areas. And yes, if you're wondering, I have heard a few possible Sasquatch encounters from the people who live near these outskirts. Those stories and investigations that would follow could make up a video of its own. The more folks I talk to, the more I think that there is a strange supernatural element that hangs over the area. I mean, yeah, Sanford is quite old, dating back to the 1700s, and there has been a lot of stories and things that have happened in this area that has been lost to time. But reverberations of those events tend to manifest themselves in ways that we may not understand today, and in turn pass them off as a paranormal event, or as one fellow said to me the other day during a conversation in a coffee shop, a strange little blip on the radar. Almost everyone I've talked to has had some kind of event happen to them, and they've been pretty open to talking about it, given the right conversational cues. Although the state of Maine is a beautiful place, and in my opinion a better way of living, there is something deep and dark just hiding under the surface, and I want to share that with you. I can remember one evening at work, my better half sent me a screenshot of a chart in an article. It was a list of the most haunted cities in the United States by reported sightings, each state having one city on this list. The entry for Maine was Sanford, and I instantly wanted to call out BS. But the keyword of reported stopped me from dismissing this wholly. I think we both know there are millions of reports all across the spectrums of the supernatural that never get reported. Well, not officially at least. And that is, of course, why we come to places like this to seek out those stories. Honestly, I would have thought Bangor or Bucksport would have topped that list. And if you have never been to either of these places, and at some point decide to visit, you would understand why. There is just something about these places, a feeling in the air, a strange presence of some kind. For me, Sanford doesn't have that. And it might be because I've grown up here and still live here. I just don't see this place I call my home that way. But after working on this project, I do look at this place a little different. And the stories I have are just a very small piece of the many experiences of the people who live here. I think it would be best to add some context to this small city in southern Maine, this place that was dubbed the town that refused to die. Sanford started off very simple, like most places that have the kind of history this city does. In 1661, William Phillips, the owner of the Saco sawmills in Saco, Maine, purchased a tract of land 8 miles square to the west of Wells, Maine, from Indian chief Fulian. And this is where Sanford sits today. Originally, this land was named Phillipstown, and it remained uninhabited until 1739. From 1752 to 1768, the people living in Phillipstown petitioned the governor of Massachusetts Bay for articles of incorporation, as Maine was still a part of Massachusetts at the time. It was approved, and the first mill was built in Springvale Village soon after. The name of Phillipstown was changed to Sanford in honor of Peleg Sanford, a governor of Rhode Island in the mid-1860s. Throughout the 1840s, 50s, and 60s, the majority of the factories were in Springvale Village. As it stands today, the first town hall of Sanford was built in Springvale, as it was the hub of employment in the area. The Springvale Historical Museum sits on the site of the old town hall. Now, it wasn't until 1868 when Thomas Goodall arrived, and then a change started to take place. At the time, there was only one felt mill on the banks of the Mousom River in operation on Washington Street. He bought that mill and its water power. The production of cotton fabrics like mohair plush and Palm Beach cloth drove Sanford to what it is today. With the influx of this business, Sanford's population exploded, with people coming here from all over the country as well the world. These massive mills were built, and Sanford boomed until the mid-1950s. A large part of the Maine production was shipped to the south, causing main parts of the mills to close. Times became very tight in the little town, as these mills were the main reason the town grew and were so successful in the textile field. And while Sanford limped along, other businesses came in to fill vacant spots, keeping the town barely alive. Through all the adversity, the people of this town and now city helped keep this place afloat. And now, Sanford becoming a fast-growing young city in the state of Maine. Now that is all well and good. All I wanted to do is give you a brief history of Sanford, because you didn't come here for a history lesson, at least not this kind of lesson. And like I said before, I think the history of Sanford is important to its age. There are a lot of well-known cities, towns, and areas that have haunted histories, that have much more notoriety. Now, does that mean there isn't any paranormal happenings here, just because it's not well known? Of course not. There are several places, here and abroad, that I've never heard of until recently, or have yet to hear of. I know from my own experiences in this city, and they have been numerous, ranging from childhood to this present day. I can attest, like all of us can, during our childhood years, our scope of the wider world is very small. And even as we become adults, portions of that view don't grow very large, if at all. For me, it was the paranormal. Even though I would watch documentaries, movies, and television shows dealing with this subject, my view of the paranormal around me never went beyond what I experienced. It wasn't until I reached my 20s did I start sharing my encounters with other people, who were also sharing theirs with me. I became a mental collector of sorts, of the strange and weird in the small town I lived. Sanford was a very different place then, and now I'd like to present to you some of the stories from the small place I call Haunted Sanford.
That's insane. What a show. Neither am I. Ooh, there was a pop.
The start of exploring this subject was the mill fire in 2017. The story goes, a couple of teens got into the mill and started playing with matches. This ignited the barrels of chemicals stored there, as well the wooden structures and floors that had been chemical and oil soaked over the history of the mill when it was in use. In the months after the fire, the town was still abuzz over the events that went on. There was half the town that really didn't care. They just enjoyed the show. But there were many who used this fire as a springboard to other topics. One of those topics was the ghost of a girl who had been murdered in that mill due to an out-of-control satanic cult. Some of this was true, but most of it was not. Then I see this picture. This was a picture taken from Chris Saunders from the paranormal team Seek It. In the article I read, he believed it was the ghost of a young girl that was murdered in the mill. A Class A apparition that was seen with their eye as well as the camera. Now, I do not discredit this photo at all. It's a fantastic pic, and very clearly it is what it says it is. And I don't think it was the girl they say it was. The reason for the doubt in my mind was a video I found on YouTube from the paranormal group Haunt Me. This is a team that goes all over the state of Maine, investigating places reputed to be haunted. One of the places investigated was the mill that burned down. It does need to be said, before I continue, their investigation was cut short due to homeless activity in the mill. But it's only one part of this investigation that is relevant to my own research. Within this video, the team split into specific groups and conducted their investigations. 2 of the members split off and went into the basement. One of them, being a psychic, had come into contact with the spirit of a young girl, whose spirit was still roaming the basement of the mill. This psychic said she worked in the mill and was picked on by the other workers there. But she died in a workplace accident, but it was just that, an accident. There was nothing nefarious that she could determine. The subject of this investigation did not work in the mills. There were no businesses in that particular mill at the time of her murder. This, of course, led me to start looking into this case to try to find some kind of answers as to who this girl may be and how the subject of my own personal investigation may or may not be related to the rumors and urban legends surrounding it. Unfortunately, finding records for these mills, like workplace accidents and names of people who worked there during the 40s and the 50s, is almost non-existent. The only thing left are some photographs, and if I'm being honest, that wasn't much help. As you can't see the actual features of the spirit in the photo, it would be impossible to match that up with anyone in any photo. I also realized trying to find any real information on this case proved to be a bit difficult, as no matter what I typed into the search engines I used, kept referring me to the same 4 articles. Now this may also have something to do with a lack of researchability on my part. My own opinion on the matter. This case happened in the spring of 1984, and at the time, the flow of information was not what it is today. All anyone had in this time period was local news, national news, the police, and word of mouth. My guess, the murder of a 12-year-old girl would have been something that would have had a very strict flow of information. Now, I'm not suggesting a cover-up or some kind of conspiracy. Something like this, such a vile act, would not be talked about much in the media, only the bare facts of the case. And I can understand this, being a parent myself. The pain and heartbreak being so overwhelming, you don't want to give up all the details that you would have, like you would today in media outlets. Back in that day, there was a certain respect that doesn't seem present today. With all of that being said, I wanted to tread lightly on what I say and how I look at the events of this case, as it relates to the reason for talking about this to begin with. I've even considered not using any names out of respect for the victim and not publicizing the pure scum that is her killer. On the other hand, this was a public legal case, so I guess you can see my dilemma. You could say the start of this case was a local teen buying a copy of the Satanic Bible. And that is probably the catalyst of a downhill slide. Truthfully, I haven't been able to find much on Scott Waterhouse. And that is probably for the best. He is, after all, the devil-worshipping scumbag that took an innocent girl's life. In one of the articles, his brother had made the comment that he had changed once he got that book. And that's not much of a surprise. I, for one, do not know the mental state of Waterhouse before he got that book or started taking LSD, even before he got wrapped up in the rumored cult that was in the town at the time. I do remember, back in my days, working at a restaurant called Sambuca's in the late 90s, I had met a man who told me he was Waterhouse's nephew. He was dating one of the waitstaff that worked there. And to be completely honest, the details of our conversations are a bit fuzzy, as when the night ended, I would sometimes go to the bar and have a couple of beers after working in the kitchen for most of the day. From what I remember, he had been told that his uncle was always a little off and quiet. If we are to assume, and seeing as how we only have that option, the tenets of the satanic faith are the complete opposite of the Catholic Christian faith. These are the things that Waterhouse latched onto. Coupled with experimenting with LSD, well, as you could say, someone who was a little off would go off the deep end. There is a rule in that book that states you don't kill people for no reason. You don't kill the innocent. And that's what he did. In his own words, he did this for the heck of it. All things considered, mental health, drugs, and a satanic Bible, these are not justifications for a crime. They may be contributing factors, but that in no way excuses anything. Honestly, there is a lot more I could say on that, but to be completely honest, I don't want to give this guy any more attention than I already have. I can link the news articles below that will give you an explanation of the case if you so choose to read it. I don't really remember when I found out about Giselle Cody. I know it was after I graduated high school. I do, however, remember when I was in school, hearing from some friends that lived on High Street and Bateman Street about a ghost girl that was in Pike Woods, down near the Mousom River, as this small, expansive woods runs parallel to this area. The craze of the satanic panic that swept through the country in the 80s and mid-90s definitely swept through Sanford. As you may have guessed, the rumor was that she had been lured into one of the old mills and had been the victim of a ritual. That couldn't be further from the truth. She was found on the banks of the Mousom River in Pike Woods. I didn't really know the entire story until I started looking into this. That's why, if you search the Sanford Mills on YouTube, you will find a few videos of people sneaking in to walk around and film there. And of course, they always talk about a girl sacrificed in the mill. It's like a dirty little urban legend. But before I go on, I wanted to pay some respect. I never knew Giselle. She was older than I was at the time when this happened. After reading a more recent article about remembering and honoring her 30 years later, you find out that she was a beautiful person, loving, caring, and happy. She loved her family, friends, town, and state. The sky was truly the limit for her. Still remembered and loved by those who knew her and were blessed to be her family. She did make a lasting impression on Sanford, although not the way she should be remembered. Most times we tend to overlook the most important parts of a story or a life because we simply don't know the inner details of a situation. You see, everyone leaves a lasting impression on where they live, good, bad, or otherwise. It lives within the people around them. For Giselle, it was her kindness, compassion, and generosity. And the quote at the end of this particular article I will link below says it all, I believe. Embrace your children. Love them, protect them, teach them, celebrate them, and strive to be patient and understanding and merciful to them. Do your best to show them how, like Giselle, they can make others happy and be a force for good in this world. And I could not agree more. I, for one, cannot confirm or deny the presence of a ghost girl in Pike Woods. Although I have never spent the night there, like many have, I've spent a fair amount of time there. I walk those trails with my sons as often as we can. It's a nice spot for a trail walk. And that point being made, I won't discredit anyone for the story they have or what they may have seen. That's not my place. I may have my own opinions about it, but I rarely give them. Just because you haven't seen it or experienced it doesn't mean it's not there. If not Giselle's spirit inhabiting the old mill, then who? Well, that's the difficult part. I don't know. And I feel confident in saying no one else does as well. At least no person or source that I've been able to find. These are records and names that, in my opinion, have been lost to time. As we may well know, when the United States entered World War II, a large majority of men went off to fight in the war. This left a massive vacancy in the world of manufacturing, like many others. Women filled these positions, and I can't imagine Sanford was any different. For me, it's not a stretch to think that there were a good number of women filling the positions in the mill, when most of that workforce went off to war. And even when the war ended, there were a lot of Americans that lost their lives fighting in Europe and the Pacific. Therein, there would have been a number of women that would have kept those positions in the mill. This goes back to the Haunt Me video, where the woman taking the reading of a young woman who died in a workplace accident in the basement of the mill. And of course the picture taken by Chris Saunders of the apparition. The question to myself, how am I going to dig into this further if I cannot get any records or speak to anyone who knew the information on this mysterious ghost girl in the area? I decided the one way I could find something out is to try a spirit box session and see if I could find out something this way. Now, I'll play the results of the session and we can come back and talk about it after. I would ask, if you can, to use headphones for this part, to see if maybe you can pick up something that I may have missed. Were you taken here by somebody? In the tunnels underneath this mill? Are there any dark spirits here with you? Is that you we see? Up in the top window? Would you like to tell us what happened to you? Was that a pic? Did some investigators come and take your picture a few years ago? Can you tell us your name?
Muriel?
Muriel? Is that your name? Muriel? That's okay. Keep talking. Tell your story. We're listening. Is that you looking at us? We're just here to talk to you and tell your story. You know that you cannot come with us. No, I don't want to come and see. Who's coming? That was tragic, wasn't it? What do you say? Young man?
Nothing but tragedy.
Nothing can be tragic.
We're listening to you. How many of you are there here? Is that your presence we feel? On the cold breeze? Are you alone here? Are there others here with you? Can you tell us about the men in the tunnels? In the black robes? Have some of them come back here too? Thank you. Thank you for telling us. We will come back soon and talk to you again, but for now we have to go. I wish you peace. There was a couple of things about this video, and it wasn't that long for a reason. I didn't really know what we were dealing with and what I would get. I did have my boys with me, as you could see. I think I would be apt to stay longer and into the dark a little more if they were not there. Second, the name Muriel. I don't know if this was the name of our ghost girl, as I don't have any way to check on that. It was very interesting, and yes, I tend to repeat my questions often after asking other questions. Lastly, the cold breeze I said that we felt. It was 80 degrees at the time of this recording, and we were literally in the middle of the city. Unless there was a waft from a rogue air conditioner, I don't know if I was willing to say that was a random occurrence. Not long after this recording, I was a guest on An Impromptu Truth. On the panel with me was our resident remote viewer, Rothian Fairmoon. I asked Roth if he may be able to take a reading of the area, spirit-wise. And for those of you who were not there, or don't remember what was said, what he said was very interesting. I only gave him very limited information, and what he came back with kind of stunned me. He related that there was indeed a spirit of a young woman there, roaming the tunnels in the area, the ones that hadn't been filled in. He went on into some detail on the tunnels and talked about a chamber where some kind of rituals may have taken place. This will be referenced later in a story. She was being followed around by an infernal being, as he stated it to be, but not necessarily evil. The being was holding a talisman in one of its hands. It had a rune on it, but he could not see the detail of what the rune represented. To be honest, I know what I said before, so I may be contradicting myself here. This segment started out as a true crime kind of story with a heavy dose of the paranormal. In the writing of this portion of the script, I veered away from that. I guess that was my unwillingness to go over all of the gory details. And I'm not really interested in telling the same story over and over. From a Sanford resident's point of view, I would leave that to someone who is much more talented in the ways of true crime, like Deadbug, a true crimer I follow. I only need to give you a little context on the situation, and I wanted to dive into more of the paranormal side of things. As well, I have another Spirit Box video to share. I am not 100% sure of the exact spot where Giselle was found, but I do believe I was close in the general area. It was a strange moment for me, because I entered this area from a side I had never entered before. For me, the Spirit Box was saying some things I had never heard out of it before. A few phrases that made me think, even as I listened back. We'll walk that way just to make sure, but This. I don't see you. Where are you? You heard that, right?
Walkway? It just said walkway.
The walkway. Do you mean the wooden walkway that I'm looking at now? Are you still out here? Would you like to tell us what happened? We're at the Melsom River. And it's the Melsom River. It doesn't quite look right. Can you see us? Fucking mosquitoes, man. So there's the Melsom River right there. I don't know how well you can see it.
It's around the flower.
Do you want us to go down the walkway? Is that where you were? Can you tell me your name? Please? Don't look down.
Not halfway.
Well, it was this main path that we took. We're going to walk back that way because that's where the Jeep is. But I want to walk out this way to see if it comes out, if we're where I think we are.
I think it said pathway and it just said don't look down, so don't look down.
Hold his hand.
Hold my hand.
While we're on this walkway, I want you to hold his hand too. In the forest. We will. Where'd I go? Oh, I'm on the walkway. Can you tell me your name?
Margaret?
I don't know.
I heard Margaret.
I thought I heard that too, but was your name Giselle? Are you out here too? I'm trying to tell your story. Get out? I'll ask one. Watch out for that break right there. Oh, we're going to leave, all right. You don't have to worry about that. How many of you are actually coming through to me, if any at all? Dude, this is right down by our house.
Wait, really?
Yeah, look, rock. Alright, let's turn around and go back to the Jeep. Can you tell me what happened to you while you're still here?
Stand up. My dear friend, you're still but to lose your mind.
Who is speaking to me now?
Hope of mine.
Did that just say your soul is mine?
I couldn't hear from over there.
Well, I hope this is... yeah, well, it's not promising. Why don't you tell me your name? So I know who I'm talking to. Thank you. I think I understand our way of direction now.
I'm gonna take you over.
Are you fading out on me? Do you not want to speak to me today?
Suggestion was not
And what is your suggestion?
one. My friend.
Your friend? Who was your friend?
Of such to know. Again.
Well, we're going to leave the area now. If you want, we can come back and talk to you again another time. But you cannot come with us. You cannot go with us.
Man,
Your place is here. Goodbye for now. I went on the general description of the articles I had read. The area, I believe, is probably around 50 square yards. Judging by the readings at the mill and Pike Woods, the content in the articles I have read, and again they will be linked down below if you want to get into it further, I do not believe Giselle's spirit is in any of these places. I think the moment she was taken, she received her wings instantly. Do I know who that ghost girl in the mills is? No, but I'm very sure of who it isn't. As for Pike Woods, I don't have any idea what the hell is going on in there, or what is in there. I think a little more investigation may be warranted. There isn't any doubt in my mind. Some shady things have happened in this small area of forest, as you would see in the next segment. And it's pretty obvious that I don't have all the answers, not even enough to satisfy myself. And maybe this whole spirit box thing is all bogus. Who really knows if these devices can do what they claim to do? Or maybe a phone app just isn't going to cut it. With all of these factors involved, it's difficult to come up with some clear answers. Questions that may never be answered. But right here, right now, we have come to our own answers, clear or not. The idea that there was a satanic cult in the city of Sanford has always been a rumor. If there's anyone who actually knows if this is true, they are not talking. I've mentioned the tunnels under the mills. Let me clarify with this short explanation before getting into the story. Hey everybody, I just wanted to do a quick explanation for this next story that's coming up. I felt it would be easier for me to explain it to you. Now, granted, this could be an artist's rendition. It might actually be a photograph. But this picture depicts what Sanford looked like at the time of the height of the mills actually just being full production, all that stuff. So I wanted to kind of give you a little explanation so when I mention certain things you can understand what I'm talking about, where I'm coming from. So let's give you a little bit of layout. This is the first set of the mills, okay? And this is the second set of the mills. Now you've got Washington Street that runs right through here. You can see where my cursor is. You've got a little intersection that's, behind this building as we see it. Pioneer Avenue runs this way, along this side. If you come down here, this is Emery Street. Now, that being said, this area right here would be Pike Woods. The Mousom River flows around this area, and of course this bridge that spans the Mousom River is down in this area. You've got High Street that runs along this way right here. You've got River Street that runs along this side, and this is the bridge from Cottage Street. Right here is where Spruce Street runs. Now, to give you an idea, where my cursor is right here, this mill, this is the one that burnt down in 2017. This one still remains. These set of buildings right here are not there anymore, including the smokestack. This is where York County Community Action is right now. This building right here, this kind of long one with this funny roof right there, that one is still there. That's used as a storage warehouse for another company. These buildings right here on the corner of High and River are not there anymore. That's just kind of a grassy area with a big fence cordoning it off. I don't know about these set of mills, but these set of mills right here and these mill buildings all had tunnels running underneath them. These tunnels would make it easier to bring products that would go from one part of the mill to another to be worked on and over to this warehouse, these warehouse areas right here. Using freight elevators to bring them up and down, of course, that's kind of self-explanatory. That's kind of where this story goes. And that's what I wanted to show you because I figured it would be easier to have a visual representation. All right, guys, let's get into the story. I can remember one particular night. Myself and a few of my friends were hanging out uptown. I was around 14 or 15 years old at the time. I've always heard the rumors about a devil cult in town and the girl who was killed because of them or in one of their rituals. I didn't think it was true. Not in a place like this, anyway. Since we were bored one night, we decided to see if we could find these tunnels and the supposed room where they used to do their devil magic. The only way I knew of to get into these tunnels was through a manhole cover that led down into them. For all I knew, it would take us into the sewers. We went over to the corners of Spruce and Davis Ave. Davis Ave is the street that comes off of Spruce Street and circles back around to Route 202, or Cottage Street. At the time, there were only one or two of these old mill buildings left. And yes, it was years before they cleared it and built York County Community Action that sits there today. We climbed and hopped the fence that was at the corner of Davis and Spruce. It took us a few to find the manhole that would eventually lead us down into the old mill tunnels. We didn't have flashlights, and we were only able to see by an old street light a little further down, and it really wasn't much help. Once we got in there, it was obviously pitch black down there, and the only thing we had was our lighters. I'm not gonna lie, it was stuffy and creepy down there. Just a really strong, uneasy feeling. Now, granted, it could have been the fact that we were in some old tunnels and you couldn't see. For me, I was starting to think about this whole situation about devil cults, ghosts, and evil spirits. So, yeah, I was more just freaking myself out than anything else. I'm not sure how long we were down there. Time just kind of seemed to stop in there. Overall, it was a mass of corridors and corners. There were some small rooms here and there, and some places that looked like it would be freight elevators. that I would assume were used to haul up people and goods into the buildings that once stood there above. We were ready to get out of there, or to try to find the way out. The fact that it was dark with no real light source made all these tunnels look the same, and I think we all thought we kept getting turned around and walking the same corridors over and over. And to tell you the truth, at that point I was just over the whole experience. That's when we came across a long hall with some very faint light at the end of it. So yeah, we followed it. We came to a larger room than we had found previously, and if I had to guess from memory, it was around 30 foot by 10 foot. It had an entrance on both ends and a doorway halfway down the left wall. The room was lit with a few candles, and there were some chairs and other things like manufacturing parts and some trash that were pushed up against the walls. Also on the walls was some strange symbols and pentagrams spray painted there. In the middle of the room was a small wooden table, and as I walked up to the table to get a better look at what was on it, I started to believe the rumors. Like the candles weren't a dead giveaway anyway. There was a dead bird on the table, its wings spread out and pinned there with nails. At least that's what it looked like. We were just standing there, a bit dumbfounded. Whatever it was we were expecting to find or not find, this was not it. At that point, a couple of us heard shuffling coming from the hallway entrance that was partway down the wall. We all kind of just froze for a moment, looking at each other to confirm what we all just heard by the terrified looks on our faces. Maybe it was an animal, most likely a rat. But then we heard it again. It was louder and it sounded like more than one. Whatever was making the noise. I took one last look at the bird on the table, and there was a lot of blood on the bird and the table. And I'm not sure that it all came from that animal, and in that moment, the blood looked fresh. Hearing the noise as it sounded like it was getting closer, we ran. This last part was a complete blur, as I don't remember the run back to the ladder that led to the street above. And the fact that we found it in the first place was, well, a thank your lucky stars moment. But this doesn't end here, not quite. I'm not sure how long after the tunnel adventure was when this happened, and as bad as the whole tunnel thing was, this was a lot worse. Not many times in my life was I actually afraid for my safety, but this was so strange, it was one of those times. Yeah, I was a little scared. My brother and I met up one afternoon to smoke a joint in Pike Woods. It was on the opposite side of the woods from the mills. We started walking down the trail, getting it ready, and then we were stopped dead in our tracks. And to be honest, it wasn't that far down the trail from the road. There was a black garbage bag hanging from a branch in a tree. It was dripping a red substance. We didn't go too close to inspect further, because there was a white dog under the bag, catching whatever was dripping from the bag. Around its face and mouth was all red as well. At that point, as we were staring at this, someone called out to us from a little higher in the tree. There was a guy in one of the branches above the bag. All I remember of him was the black jacket and a potential knife he may have had in his hand. He informed us, "You don't want to be here right now. You should go." All things considered, that seemed like it was some good advice. I have no idea what the hell was going on there. And that was the single craziest thing I've had the displeasure of walking in on. This story came to me one night when the couple that lived up on the third floor came down to hang out. She left early, and he stayed to have a few beers in the backyard. He told me this story. This took place at a small building in the larger Mills complex. It's known around here as the Pump House. There were several buildings that used to be next to it and behind the structure at the time. Only the Pump House remains. And for total transparency, I don't know what the real name of this building was, or even if its purpose was what the name suggests. The Pump House is since gutted, and there's nothing in it, except a dirt floor, and has since been sealed off to prevent the homeless of the area congregating within. This happened to me last summer, when I first came to live with her and her mother. It was a bit rocky, as we were trying to figure each other out and come to a happy medium in this new relationship. On one random evening, we had gotten into an argument, and truthfully, I don't remember what it was about. I went outside to cool off and have a cigarette, and when I came back, she had locked the door. In her petty little voice, she told me through the door I could stay out and cool off for the rest of the night. It was the summer, and it seemed pretty nice out, so I decided I would take a walk and come back later, and stay on the open air porch at the front of the building. As I got down to the lower end of High Street near the mills, I started to feel raindrops, and it escalated pretty quickly, like it was going to downpour at any moment. Now I knew I was close to the pump house, and I hurried down there to get out of the rain, and I pretty much made it in time because the skies opened up. If you were standing right in front of the building, I was in the rear left corner of the building. I was the only one in there, and other than the sound of the rain, there seemed like there was no one else around, and I was alright with that, considering all the sketchy characters and the occasional tweaker that would often take shelter in this small abandoned building. The humidity really began to rise because of the rainstorm, and because of the sound of the rain, I was about to nod off, and as I think about it now, I may have, as the next thing I know, I was woken up by voices. I looked around and I didn't see anybody. Considering the rain had stopped by this time, I figured there may have been people standing at the nearby bridge. It wasn't uncommon for people to fish off of that bridge, no matter what the time of day or night. They were loud, then distant, and then they shifted around the room, like a surround sound system, with the sound coming out of different speakers. That's the best way that I can describe it. And if the voices weren't bad enough, there were the sounds of machines running, and I couldn't tell you what kind of machines. Then the strange stuff really ratcheted up to the next level. That caused me to run. In the corner across from me, and it wasn't that far, only about 20 feet or so, the best way I can describe this, a ball of light formed in that corner. It was bright. It changed colors between white to yellow to orange, and it was making me nervous, but at the same time I was mesmerized. It was when the voices and machine sounds became deafening that it snapped me out of this trance I was in, and I knew at that moment that I had to make a run for it. I bolted out of the doorway that was next to this ball of light. I really had that pucker factor going, and when I looked over my shoulder, it was following me. I ran across the short bridge right next to the pump house. That was where the Mousom River crosses through this complex. I stopped on the other side of the bridge because the ball of light stopped. I stood there watching it for a bit, and after a few minutes, that ball of light disappeared. It's the single most weird and scary experience that I've had to date, and haven't been back there since, and for the record, probably never will go back there. Let me say first, I've had my experiences. But this one was something else. This started May 1st, 2022. I walked into Roger's Super Dollar with my sons, like we would normally most days, to get snacks, drinks, or any other little odds and ends. And if you don't know, Roger's is a butcher shop / general store. It's basically across the street from where I live. It is at the most a 4-minute walk from my front door. Well, when I walked in, we were greeted as normal. I've been going to this shop since I was a little boy, and Oakley has been running up and down these aisles since he learned to walk. So I guess you could say they know us pretty well over there. We went in, did our shopping, stopped for a little conversation with the people working at the back counter. As we got to the front to cash out, I noticed something different about the cashier. She didn't seem like her normal cheery self. I'm in this place nearly every day. I was right. She asked me if I had heard about a mutual friend. I'll call him T. I was informed that he had passed away the day before. This one got me. I've known T for many years. I'd spent a long time hanging out with him. He was a damn good dude and a good friend to me. T was always a heavy drinker, and he passed away from liver failure. He was on the list for a transplant, but it just didn't come in time. As I was busy with the rigors of normal life, I had not seen him in a while. And in the back of my mind, I had been wondering about him, as we both frequented Rogers and a store down the road called The City. I heard about this on a Monday. The next day, I took a vacation day from work. This now brings us to Wednesday, the 3rd. One of my coworkers brought in a couple of boxes of Entenmann's donuts. And I'm not talking about the regular box with the 3 flavors. I'm talking about the deluxe box with the 5 different flavors of donut goodness. All night long, I'm thinking, I want some Entenmann's donuts. After work, I hit a couple of places on Main Street, Circle K and Cumbies. But alas, they didn't have what I was looking for. As I was leaving Cumberland Farms, I normally take a left onto Main Street, and my residence is just down the road, after a couple of lefts and a right. At this moment, and still to this day, even as I write this out, I cannot for the life of me have an explanation for why this popped into my head, as I had completely forgotten about this. But all of a sudden, I remembered a story one of my coworkers had told me about the bridge on Emery Street. He saw a basketball-sized globe of white light weaving in and out of the trees in Pike Woods. It was about 10 to 15 feet below the tops of the trees. And my thoughts on that, if it was a drone, that was the best damn drone pilot on the face of planet Earth. Because the trees in Pike Woods are very close together. As well, not even a searchlight would have been able to make that kind of showing, mostly because you would see where the beam of light was coming from. As nonchalant as it sounds, I chalked it up to yet another supernatural kind of things these woods have a reputation for. On a whim, I decided to go straight through the intersection and head towards the bridge on Emery Street. Seriously, there was no way I was going to see anything. Well, I was a bit wrong in that statement. As I came up on the bridge, there was someone standing on the other side of the guardrail to my right side, or passenger side. A very thin woman, or as I was rolling up, that's what this figure looked like. She was in a spot that was very odd. The place where this prospective woman was standing was a small patch of pavement on the opposite side of a guardrail on this bridge. Granted, the drop wasn't that far, 12 feet or so, but the water was cold, and even though it wasn't deep, there were a lot of rocks under there. It wouldn't take much for you to lose your balance and fall down and get seriously hurt. I couldn't understand why someone would be standing there at midnight, never mind in the daylight. At this point, I was transfixed on this figure in front of me, and I didn't realize that I was coming to a stop. And I had also switched on my high beams. This woman was back facing me. I realized I could see through her. And when this figure looked over her shoulder at me for a split second, I froze. To put it plainly, I was as scared as I think I've ever been. I don't remember a whole lot of what I was feeling at the moment. My brain literally had to reboot. I'm sure if anyone was able to look at my face in this moment, you would have seen the error flashing across my forehead. I'm going to guess I didn't sit there that long. This little voice in my head yelled, "Step on the gas, dummy." And I did just that. I mashed the gas pedal and sped home. Now, even then, my brain was stuttering. I knew I'd seen a ghost. As I sat out in my vehicle, smoking half a pack of cigarettes trying to calm my nerves. I need you to understand something. I knew this woman. I'm going to call her L. You see, she was T's ex-girlfriend and someone he had continued to be close with after they had broken up. The significance was, She had passed away 6.5 years prior and was found under that bridge. My wife and I had spent many nights with the both of them, so you could say we knew her pretty well. I won't get into the details of the where and why, as it really doesn't impact the story. I'm at a loss for a reason why I had to see this. And if I'm being truthful, this isn't something, in my opinion, I needed to experience. But it happened. And in that regard, it's given me a chance to share this with you. I had even considered doing a spirit box session here, just to see for the sake of seeing if there was any deeper meaning to this encounter. But ultimately I decided against it. This experience was enough. As well, I'm not taking any chances, and I don't take this road or bridge at night anymore. I wanted to highlight one particular area in Sanford to look into, and dare I say, investigate. There are some of the stories in this area that peg the weird meter, in my opinion. I suspect this is just the tip of the iceberg. For as many people that have stories and experiences, there are just as many that do not, or have, and they haven't realized what was going on around them. In my travels of trying to get people to open up and see if they have had experiences like this, I found there are just some folks who would never have anything like this happen to them. Maybe some are wide open, and there are some that are not. Either way, it's more than interesting to find a collection of stories about the spaces around you that you may never know are even there. I could probably make another video filled with just stories alone on Haunted Sanford. And I may just do that. Some I have already put into videos, and some you haven't heard yet. I've talked about them on live streams on other friends' channels. And for those of you that have heard them, your opinion could go either way, and that's okay. Sometimes I wish I'd never experienced these open your eyes kind of moments. Sometimes I think, in a way, it would be better to be ignorant of the wider world around us. Being honest, having your eyes open to certain things can really mess with you. It takes most of what you have learned and throws it right out the window. And for me, the first thing I thought was, so you're saying there could have been a monster under my bed? As it goes, I would have missed out on all of the strangeness this world has to offer. The fear, the adrenaline, and the wonder that comes along when you realize we don't live in a black and white world. There are little seams of color and little pockets of mystery that are woven into the fabric of a reality we may never fully understand. As we draw this presentation to a close, I'm going to assume that most of you who see this are like myself. You have had experiences of all different kinds. You enjoy these stories because you have some of your own. And frankly, it's nice to know there are other places and people who are sharing in this, even if it is only from an entertainment value. And there are those of you that think this is all BS, and that's just as good. There is no rule that says you have to believe anything you don't want to. I'm not here to make you do anything or think anything. I'm just sharing stories and the small adventure that went into creating this show. The only thing I'll say, the next time you get up and get that drink of water in the middle of the night, or you're closing up your workplace in the dark, night fishing, walking in the woods, any place you may be alone or with one other person, you hear a strange noise, feel a strange presence, or see a strange thing. Believe or not believe, but take care, because truly, you never know what is lurking around the corner.